Welcome to part 3 of recording your personal history. In parts 1 and 2, we started with why to do it, why should you, to record or not to record, and who's best to do it. Actually, the first one got into gains and pains, and the second one got into pains, and then the second one also covered who's best to record it and when. This part is going to get into what kind of personal history do I want. And we're going to talk about the multiple types. You got fiction, nonfiction, and the value proposition, I'm going to call it, for doing a family history, a personal history, not a family history. So let's talk about fiction. That's not what we're discussing. We're not talking about fiction. If you wanted to write fiction, that's not a personal history. You're welcome to go write fiction, but that's not what we're talking about. So in nonfiction, there's multiple types of nonfiction. One is a type like this video, which if I were to transcribe this to a book would be sharing knowledge about how to do something. The other is sharing your story, and that's really what a personal history is about, and you're sharing it to the audience of your future generations. So kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, all of those people down below. As I've discussed, my granddad was one of the only ones in my family history, and I've got our family history back to the 1700s so far, I think 1500s so far, in some lines, not all of them, but that's the only person I have that actually wrote a personal history, and so that's, to me, that's nice. Okay. So let's talk about sharing your knowledge. If you want to do self-help books or how-to books or business books, the value proposition for those is, you have an audience that wants to learn something specific, and that's not what we're really talking about on this. We're talking about how to share your story. So in sharing your story, we're talking about some different things. Now, some people are going to say, well, you should write a memoir. Well, that's an option. Some people will say, well, you should write an autobiography. That's an option. Some people don't want to go that far, and they just want to put a bunch of pictures together and have a photographic history. If you add descriptions of the photographs and who's in them and about what the event was and what you remember about it, that could be terrific. Just the photographs by themselves, I'll tell you, I've got hundreds of those that have been passed down from my great-grandparents and grandparents. And unless somebody that knew them at the time tells you who's in those pictures, it's really hard to understand that. So photographic histories, if you're going to do that, take a selection of your best photographs that represent time periods in your life. Perhaps I would suggest strongly making a brief explanation about each photograph, like the who, what, when, where, why, that kind of stuff. So when, where, why the photo was taken, who's in it. That's another piece that I forgot to add here, but add who's in it. And that could be your personal history. Other people will collect their wedding certificate, the marriage license, maybe from some of the ancestors. I've got their World War II draft registration cards. Maybe you have like their college degrees or their grade reports from grade school or high school. Maybe you've got significant awards they made during their work career. So a collection of important documents could include birth, marriage, church ordinances, school, military records, awards, or other personal documents. I do have my another granddad wrote something while he was in high school about his life, but that was the last I got. So I got his knowledge of being a kid up to high school, and that was it. But my other granddad wrote one that covered his whole life, which was really quite interesting. And everybody's family goes back to farmers at some point, I'm sure, unless I guess you were from royalty, but it helps people in your future to see what's going on. Another thought is you could just do a chronology of the main events in your life. And so here you put the decades or years in order, and then put the chronology of what happened with the main events or all of the events. It depends on how you want to cover it. Again, the choices are up to you. You choose how you want to do this. Another option is a recorded oral history. In the old days, they used to do this in tribal groups. They would do this with a tribal oral historian, and he would memorize the stories. This doesn't require any laborious writing. Digital audio recordings are now easier than ever. There's a program called Audacity that's a free audio editing software that makes it easy to take out the ums and ahs that you're hearing me do in this video. And it's really easy to, it takes time, but it's easy to do. The tools are really easy to use. You press record, you have a microphone. Your webcam microphone is sufficient. I use this microphone because I want a little better audio for this YouTube video, but you don't have to have high-end gear to make this stuff happen. And then if you're going to do oral history, you need to either have prompts. I'm going to suggest prompts on, say, 3x5 cards or something like that to kind of interview yourself. Or another method of this is to get another family member and give them a list of questions and have them interview you and record the whole thing on video or audio or both. So that's a way you could, another way. Again, these are different options for how you want to do your personal history. Another option is a memoir, and that's where you have a series of personal stories. Think of them as scenes in your life's movie, and you put those scenes through in the order that you want and what you made of those. That's another option. Another is an autobiography. Another is a family legacy, which is kind of like an autobiography, but it really tells your family who you are. And it could be kind of a combination of some of the biographical stuff, but maybe more chronology of the main events. Your own method that I didn't mention here is okay too. Remember, this is your personal history. So let's get into what's the value. Who in the future is going to care that you shared your story? So you're going, the goal in something like a memoir or an autobiography you buy at a bookstore is to move or entertain an audience and to help them learn about themselves from your story. In personal family histories, the audience is also learning about you. And so in a commercial one, where you buy somebody else's memoir or autobiography, you learn about your own life by reading their story. And so someone else can learn about their own life by reading your story if you choose to do a memoir or autobiography format. You might require more editing in one of these, because they're considered more less professionally done. You can get away with things here that if you're going to publish out to other people, the expectations are a little higher. Okay, so the value proposition in terms of sharing your story is really, here's what I did and how I felt about it and what happened as a result. When I do interviewing and hire people, we use something called behavioral interviewing, where you ask for a situation that was something like this and tell us about the action you took and the results that occurred. And so this is a way of accomplishing that, that you can do the same thing in sharing your story, where you tell about a series of scenes where you have a situation or a problem, the actions you took and the results, and how you felt about it. That's for personal history. How you felt about it would be something to ask, whereas in interviewing, you're not going to do that. But how you felt about it is a big piece of this, right? So let me just highlight that to kind of make that really obvious. All right, so how you felt about it on a personal history is even more important. In interviewing, you don't get into that, but in a personal history, that's important. So then you tell the story honestly and let the reader decide what it means to them. I'm not judging my granddad. I just understand more about what his life was and how he thought about things and what he aspired to, all because he wrote some of that for me. Well, for his whole family, not just for me, all his grandkids. Personal histories are not a great venue for directing future generations. So if you really want to, instead of sharing your story, you want to share your knowledge and tell people how to do something, like this video is a how to make a personal history, right? But if you're sharing your personal history, that's probably not the time to lecture your future generations about what you think and how things should happen there, just because direction is context specific and your context is likely different from theirs. There may be things in the future that you don't even know about now. And so if you feel the need to direct and you're writing, then you're really writing a self-help book. If you are writing to share your story, then that's different. And so really what we want you to do is in a personal history, it's nonfiction and you're sharing your story. Okay, so knowing that's what we're talking about there. Both types can be about the same facts, but they're told in a different way and there's a different value proposition. So again, if you want to write a self-help book about how to do something that you know how to do, great. That's not a personal history. Feel free to do that, but don't do them at the same time is all I'm saying. They're separate tasks. So share your story in a personal history. Okay, value proposition for this. Let what we just talked about here drive your decision about which type of book to write. Any effort is better than no book at the end. So please, any effort is better, but write only one type at a time. So if you look at that, you're going to make a choice. You're going to go from it. You're going to learn from the experience, and then you can write both types if you want to, but write them as separate books. All right, so really what we've covered is we're not talking about fiction, we're talking about nonfiction, sharing your story, not so much sharing your knowledge. Although you're welcome to write other books that are sharing your knowledge. Okay, so that's the extent of what kind of personal history do I want. The next part in the video is going to get into how to write it. So preparation, how to outline, how to record, make a plan for your recording of your history, how to actually write it or record it, how to edit it, and then how to publish. So that'll get into the next part. Thank you for joining.